All right, let's dive right in. We are heading straight into the revolutionary and, let's be honest, pretty wild world of decentralized finance. Now, DeFi promises to rebuild our entire financial system from the ground up, but it's also a landscape just filled with new and really complex risks. So the big question is, what are they, and how do they actually work? So, what are we really talking about when we say DeFi? Well, at its heart, the big idea is to create this global, open alternative to the financial system we all use today. The goal is to build things like lending, borrowing, and trading directly on the blockchain. This makes them accessible to literally anyone with an internet connection. No bank required. It's all about cutting out the traditional middlemen.
And this isn't some small niche corner of the internet. The DeFi ecosystem is this bustling, complex new economy with a ton of different players. You've got the users, of course. But you also have the application designers who are building these new protocols, the liquidity providers who are fronting the capital to make it all work, and even insurers trying to bring a little stability to this new frontier.
And believe me, the stakes are incredibly high. Just to give you an idea of the scale, at its peak back in late 2021, there was a staggering $178 billion locked into these DeFi protocols. That is just a massive amount of capital, and it showed up with unbelievable speed. It really shows you how much excitement there is for this tech. But of course, with that much money on the table, it becomes a massive target.
And that right there gets to the central tension of DeFi. Because as all that money poured into these protocols, the number of security incidents, well, it just skyrocketed. The data shows this really clear upward trend of hacks and exploits. It is the classic high-risk, high-reward scenario playing out right before our eyes. And make no mistake, this isn't just a fluke. The experts are really clear on this. These problems are a fundamental, common challenge in the DeFi space. We're not talking about a few isolated incidents here. We're talking about systemic issues that have led to billions and billions of dollars in losses.
Which, brings us to the main question. When you can get hacked because of a tiny bug in the code, or exploited through some clever market trick, or even lose money because the blockchain itself has a problem, how on earth do you even begin to make sense of it all? It can feel totally chaotic.
Well, luckily for us, we have a map. Researchers have actually put together a risk classification framework that brings some much-needed order to all this chaos. You can think of it as our guide for this whole explainer. It breaks down all these threats into logical categories so we can understand them systematically instead of just staring at a wall of confusion. So our map starts with the absolute foundation of DeFi, the very heart of it, smart contract risk. Now, these are the self-executing bits of code that make everything run without a middleman. But as we're about to see, they are also its greatest potential weakness.
Smart contract risk really comes in two main flavors. On one side, you have technical risk. This is your classic software bug. Think of it like a typo in a legal contract that makes it do something completely unexpected. On the other side, you have economic design risk. Now, this is different. The code might be technically perfect, but the financial rules it's enforcing have a giant loophole that can be exploited.
Let's focus on technical risk first. This is pretty straightforward. It's when the code itself is just broken. A function doesn't work the way the developers thought it would, a calculation is off, or maybe a security check is just missing. And because blockchain transactions are irreversible, these tiny little coding errors can lead to massive, permanent losses.
And these flaws can be surprisingly basic. We're talking about things like unsafe math, where a simple rounding error can be exploited to basically create money out of thin air. Or a contract that doesn't bother to check the data a user sends it. Or, and this is a big one, improper access control, which lets an attacker do things that should be restricted, essentially giving them the keys to the castle.
Okay, now let's flip over to the other side, economic design risk. This one is a lot more subtle and in some ways a lot more clever. Here, the code runs exactly as it's supposed to, no bugs. The problem is that the economic rules built into that code are flawed. An attacker can use the system's own logic against itself to manipulate it and walk away with a huge profit.
The most famous example of this is the flash loan attack. It's basically a financial superpower. Here's how it works. An attacker borrows millions of dollars with absolutely zero collateral. The only catch is they have to pay it all back in the exact same transaction. In that split second, they use that huge pile of cash to manipulate an asset's price on one exchange, use that fake price to exploit a different protocol, repay the loan, and pocket the difference. All of that happens in the blink of an eye. It's wild.
But the risks aren't just in the code that lives on the blockchain. Not at all. They also exist in the human and system operations that surround it. And that brings us to our second big category, cybersecurity operational risk.
You know, what's funny is that while the technology is brand new, a lot of the crimes are as old as time. These risks fit really neatly into traditional categories we've known about for decades, like internal fraud, external fraud, and just plain old system failures. It's the same old playbook, just with a high-tech twist. So let's look at a few examples. For external fraud, you've got phishing websites that look totally legit but are designed to trick you into signing away control of your crypto wallet. Or you have hackers who directly break into a project's servers to steal the private keys that control hundreds of millions of dollars. And then there's the infamous rug pull. That's a classic internal fraud where developers hype up a project, get everyone to invest, and then just vanish with all the money.
Okay, our final risk category is maybe the most fundamental of them all: blockchain infrastructure risk. We're not talking about a single app anymore. We're talking about problems with the very foundation that all of DeFi is built on top of.
See, this type of risk affects every single protocol running on a specific blockchain. If the chain itself is flawed, it really doesn't matter how secure your app's code is. It's like building the world's strongest skyscraper, but you've built it on a cracked and unstable foundation. Eventually, it's all coming down.
So what do these cracks in the foundation look like? Well, one big one is MEV, or maximal extractable value. It's a fancy term, but it basically means the people who process transactions can see your trade coming and they can jump in line ahead of you with their own trade to profit from your move. It's the digital version of front-running. Then you have things like network congestion, where fees get so high that regular users get priced out. And in some really extreme cases, the entire blockchain can just stop working, go completely offline.
So let's do a quick recap. We've got three major buckets of risk here. First, smart contract risk, which is like a badly written legal contract full of loopholes. Second, cybersecurity operational risk, which is pretty much just a digital bank robbery. And third, blockchain infrastructure risk, which is like having that cracked foundation under your house. So where are most of these problems actually coming from? Well, the data from the study is pretty revealing. It shows that technical flaws in smart contracts, simple coding bugs, are the single most frequent cause of major incidents. That's followed by operational hacks and those clever economic exploits. It turns out, simple mistakes in the code are still the biggest problem.
So what is the big takeaway from all this? The point of this whole framework isn't to scare you away from DeFi or to make you think you can avoid risk all completely. That's impossible. The point is to empower you. It's about transforming that vague, anxious feeling of, wow, this seems risky, into structured, usable knowledge. It gives you the tools to start asking the right questions.
And all of this leaves us with one final and pretty provocative question. In this brand new world where finance is literally just code, who's ultimately on the hook when things go wrong? Is it the user, the developer, the protocol itself? There are no easy answers here, but understanding these risks is the absolute first step in navigating this financial revolution. Thanks for watching.